All right, here we are again. Anybody die last night? I mean, it is funny, but we all know it's not funny. You understand? If you do a bit of surveys around, in a 1 kilometre neighbourhood, 5 kilometre neighbourhood, so a circle, you knock on doors, do a survey. Did anybody die here last night who didn't expect to? This is the one, It's very fascinating. I mean, it's not funny, but it's funny. Because why? Because we have this wrong view of grasping at permanence. So let's talk about this morning. Okay, so then, if we're still alive, how amazing. Our petrol tanker morality hasn't run out yet, and that's Buddha's view. So we think, amazing. Don't waste it. Don't waste this precious life, because every second it's ticking away. Every second the petrol's running out. Karma's kind of like that. It's kind of dynamic, as opposed to this feeling of this big permanent lump of me plodding through life, This is just not true. Misconception. So make the most of it. So we're here, sitting, listening, thinking, analysing, taking what we can from this advice. If there's any advice we want, maybe there's nothing, but that's cool. We're the boss, not Buddha. To do what? To help us develop our amazing potential for clarity, joy, contentment. I'm not being funny. It's literally true from the Buddha's point of view. It's for our sake and, of course, for the sake of others, We live in this crazy world together. That's why we're here. Sangye charang choke chognam la jangchu badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipes sonam ki drola penchir sangye dropa shok sangye charang choke chognam la jangchu badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipes sonam ki drola penchir sangye dropa shok sangye charang choke chognam la Chu baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipes sonam ki trola penchir sangye dropa sho. So, as I said before, this is one way of framing all of Buddha's teachings. He says the problem is, in our minds, we've got this nonsense, layers and layers and layers of misconceptions. It's the simplest, clearest way to put it. And that this, for the Buddha, is why there is suffering. Why there are even universes. Okay, that sounds pretty abstract to us, But this is the thing. Minds create the universe. Minds are central. We're not the handiwork of anybody else. That's the weirdest idea for the Buddha. We're the handiwork of ourselves. This beginningless and endless continuity of mental moments, this mind, and there are trillions of us. Every millisecond of what we think and do and say is what programs us, is what produces us. In just the same way that we understand, if you play piano for 10 years, you get better at it. If you kick footballs for 10 years, you get better at it. If you kill for 10 years, you get better at it. You're programming yourself. You're producing yourself moment by moment. Practicing piano for 10 years, what you're doing is producing a musician. We don't think of it this way, but it's evident. Well, that's what we're doing every second with our thoughts, all thoughts. But we have this bizarre idea in our culture that when you come to mathematics and mathematicians and music and cooking and gardening, thoughts are really important. You've got to have the right thoughts. Think about it. If you want to play Bach, you've got to kind of make up what you think Bach's doing. You've got to have incredible intelligence, incredibly complicated theory. And it starts in your mind, and mind is thoughts. So we don't think of it that way, but think of it. A recipe is a series of thoughts. And the right recipe is necessary. I mean, just cooks will cook a thing 20 times before they dare to put it in a recipe book. But we think when it comes to love and hate and jealousy and fantasies and jumping on little girls and abusing and torturing and having sex, in our mind we think, oh, I'm allowed to think what I like. It doesn't matter. This is schizophrenic. This is insanity. But that's what we think. That's our world thinks that. Our scientific world thinks that. Our psychological world thinks that. It is madness. Can you kind of hear my point? When it comes to making a cake, you've got to have the right thoughts. We don't say it like that, but listen to it. A cake starts with the recipe in your head. You can't say, oh, I'd like to put 13 teaspoons of sugar in my cake, please. You won't get a cake. Well, you get a mess. So we think, I can think what I like. I remember reading in my New York Times one day, on my iPad, this woman in Brooklyn got into her husband's computer and discovered he was part of a cannibal site and they were planning to kill and eat her. The point is this. She got so shocked she went to the FBI, not just the police, It's special. So the point is, his defense lawyers, supposedly intelligent people, Their defense was, oh, they're allowed to think this. That doesn't mean they're going to do it. Meaning, as Lama Zopa says, the vast majority of humans on this planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in our head plays any role at all in our lives. I mean, that is schizophrenic. I'm sorry. People tell me not to use that word. Excuse me, it's a great word. Buddha would have liked it. It's extremely accurate. Okay, depends on how you define schizophrenic in the world, isn't it? Well, Lama Yeshe would use it often. I mean, that is madness. But that's how we are about our precious, ridiculous mind. It's my secret world in here. We're encouraged to have fantasies. So they were having fantasies of killing and eating his wife. But they're allowed to do this. It's only their mind. I mean, that is madness. That's like thinking it doesn't matter what thoughts you have about music, you'll still play Bach. Clearly you won't. You'll play a mess. That's what Buddha's saying. All the nutty thoughts we have are why we have a mess. So what do? We change our mind, have good thoughts. It's really not rocket science. But it feels like it to us because we're so complicated. Are we communicating? This is being a Buddhist. Forget all the stupid looking robes and 14th century stuff and this and bald heads and prostrations. They've got a certain role, okay? The point is to change your mind. That's when you become a Buddhist. You can do prostrations till the cows come home. You won't get enlightened. Because you've got to change your mind. It'll help you. It's a technique. It's like going on a good diet. It'll help you get healthy. It'll help, jogging and running will help you play basketball better. Playing basketball is getting the ball in the hoop. But that stuff helps you do it. You don't just sit there and only jog and get the ball in the hoop. You jog so you can get the ball in the hoop. Well, you do prostrations and water bowls and live in vows and have bald heads and 14th century Tibetan clothing if you choose to. It's all part of the deal to help you do the job of being a Buddhist, which is to change your mind. So therefore, you have to know it. That's why you have to have single point of concentration. So you can know it deeply and intimately and intricately and profoundly and subtly. So you can then use a discrimination to check, my God, there's a weed and there's a herb. I thought they were the same before. Pull out the bloody weeds and grow the herbs. Excuse me, Australians speak like that. It's not really very bad at all. Americans don't say it. And one time I got so mad at the AT&T lady, I said bloody something. She practically wanted to sue me, I said, oh, that's normal language for Australians. So are we communicating? So the job is actually easy, but because we're so because we have a complicated other idea about it, we can't hear that it's easy. So persevere, So what are these? So Buddha's saying our minds are riddled with ridiculous misconceptions. And a misconception is a thought that is not in sync with reality. So we've got conventional reality. Forget ultimate yet. Conventional. If I say that's an iPad, that's a misconception. And I'll be in trouble with it. He asked yesterday, why do we suffer because we have misconceptions? That's why. It's my iPad. Pass me my iPad. And you've got a yellow cup there. You've got to have a big problem trying to make that an iPad. Well, Buddha says you see a fantasy-looking, divine, delicious thing, vibrating deliciousness that will completely make you happy on that plate. He says it won't. You'll be disappointed every time, and we are disappointed every time, but we forget it. Next day, we stuff it in again, hoping. We're as mad as we say in Australia, as mad as a snake. So, what?
We have lots of snakes.
And it's not relevant. But you're right. It's not relevant, though, so shush. He gets it worse than you, honey. Don't worry about it. Just keep her. She's good. She's learning.
She's a fast learner.
So look, that means we've got to recognise in the mind the neuroses. Oh, it's there. It's lovely. It's delicious with hot water. Thank you. I'll drink it to prove it's delicious. Look, it's there. It is that my cup is not empty of water. It's full of delicious hot tea. Water, Okay, so what Buddha's saying is the Buddhist model, like we began yesterday, and it's deceptively simple. If we compare it with modern psychiatry, all the various volumes of mental illnesses, and if we compare it with psychology and all the therapy systems, Buddha's view is embarrassingly simple. It's like it can't be true. It's so simple. Well, it's Buddha's view. The words are simple, but the Buddha's view of it, because of single point of concentration, invented by these amazing Indians before the Buddha, enable you to go to subtle, unbelievable depths of clarity in our own mind, so we can see crystal clear and hear crystal clearly the thousands and thousands and thousands of seemingly chaotic thoughts, and start to unravel them and recognize and do the work. This is day-to-day job. It's not mystical. It just takes a lot of effort and a lot of courage. The very first step that needs the courage is to stop believing it's because of Shuki and this and that and him and her and everybody else that I'm happy and suffering. That's the big one. That's the massive first step that prevents us from even wanting to look in here. That's the one we don't even think that whatever goes on in our mind plays a role, because we're so obsessed with the outside. So that's the first step. To even consider, to even posit the possibility that your thoughts and feelings and emotions just might play a role in your life. All Buddha says is that they're the main thing. It's kind of stunning, So he divides into three categories. Well, first of all, we've got sensory consciousness, remember? Which are really, like I said before, as Lama Yeshe puts it, we make the body the boss. And all the sensory experiences completely control our lives. Think about it. As we analysed yesterday briefly, the function of feeling. Feeling, we either have pleasant feelings or unpleasant feelings, the way they use this word, and there's every millisecond continuously be having one feeling or another. Forget the third category, which are neutral. Forget those. There's happy feelings and unhappy feelings, and they're very subtle and they're continuously happening. And we know when we, any time there's any kind of even a semblance of a happy feeling, whatever it is that triggered it, we will do it again. That's why the fisherman kept fishing, because he noticed he got pleasant feelings when he fished. So naturally we don't, especially if the world accepts it, you don't ever check up, is that a valid thing to do to get a good feeling? Because the world accepts it. But the world might not accept, let's say, bashing the fish to death. If you start seeing fishermen bash the fish to death, we might get nervous. So then he'd have to do that in private if he felt he had to do that, because no one accepts it. So we don't check. We don't analyse. We don't check up whether the object that our mind has contact with, which seems to trigger pleasant feelings, whether that action or object is a valid thing to trigger pleasant feelings. This is how it works, because we have this sensory body. We have this body of the five senses, and it's the doorway between us and the universe. So we have one state of mind which is under the negative category, called attachment, the boss in day-to-day life effectively. And on the basis of another state of mind called feeling, one of the always present mental factors in the third category, the neutral ones, it's just the way it is. It's not good or bad. It's not negative or positive. Then we all know, everybody knows logically, we prefer happy feelings to unhappy feelings. And they can function also through the body. We know that. So basically attachment's the junkie in us that's frantic for good feelings. So just to crave a good feeling, it's not enough. You won't get a good feeling, because we have a sensory body. You got to have an object of the senses. Oh, it's such hard work. Look how hard we have to work just to get a good feeling. We've got to go out the door, get dressed, go to the shop, get a cake, give them money, which means you've got to work to get the money, to get a piece of cake, to shove it in your mouth, to get a good feeling. It's really hard work. Can you imagine being able to get good feelings without sensory objects? And that's Buddha's trip. I tell you. He says, you know what, people? I've got a method for you. You can get so many good feelings you won't believe it. And you don't need to spend a cent. And you don't need one sensory object. I'm not even being sarcastic here. I'm being literal. So basically what we think happiness is, being beings in this body of the senses, which we take as a given, but which Buddha, from his bigger perspective point of view, is intense suffering. It's like being born as a junkie, with the mind of a junkie in a body that has the five senses. And to survive, we have to get junk. We're born as junkies, living in a body of a junkie that lives in a world made of heroin. And to be surviving, we have to ingest the heroin. This is the deepest suffering for the Buddha, and this is what he calls samsara, and it's what we just take for granted. So of course, a big ask to think outside this box, I understand. So what he's basically saying is, he's found a method for us to start again. So happiness. What's happiness? Well, materialists, we as samsarists would say, happiness is, listen carefully, is what we get when we get an object of the senses. That can include fishing, raping, torturing, cake, having consensual sex, whatever it might be. It doesn't matter. It's something that involves the body. The grossest level, we can see this. We're sensory beings. So as I said, it's the doorway between us and the universe. So for us, happiness is what we get, whether it's a moment or for 5 minutes or whatever. Happiness is what we get when we get an object of the senses. Which really is saying, better still, happiness is what we get when we get what attachment wants. Because attachment is the little junkie in there running the show. Searching out for the objects that we have karma with, such that when we have contact with them, the pleasant feeling is triggered. That's the purpose of everything we do. There's goodness on top of that, but this is the junkie that runs the show. So for us then, happiness is what you get when you get what attachment wants. Buddha says, no, you got it wrong, babes. Happiness is what you get when you give up attachment. That's it. We think it is what you get when you get what attachment wants. He says, no, the happiness you'll get, and don't think my words are being funny and religious. Happiness, bliss, joy, good feelings is what we end up with without break, without changing into unhappy feelings, when we have given up attachment and the other delusions. And it's absolutely natural. It's not reward. No one's going to give it to you. It's not if you get a good girl, God gives you a good reward, mummy rewards you. Nothing like that. There's no concept like that. It is a natural result. It's a natural law. In other words, what Buddha has found, that our consciousness, which is not physical, once it is decontaminated, once the delusions have been removed, there is only bliss left. There is only joy. There is only wisdom. There is only clarity. There is only perfection. There is only goodness. That stuff, for the Buddha, is at the core of our being, is already who we are. It's like water. We know it's H2O. It's pure, clear stuff. Now, we know it can be polluted. So polluted you die if you drink it. But we know, even without being scientists, that the H2O is always there. It's not as if the pollution merges with the H2O and then the H2O is gone. No, there's always H2O. So you have to identify the pollution and extract it. The purity is always there. This is a perfect analogy of the mind for the Buddha's view. Purity, clarity, which means joy, love, compassion, virtue, they are the natural states of a mind. And we have them, you can never lose them. Hitler has them, he will never lose them. They're there. As long as there's a consciousness, and Buddha says it's a beginningless and endless, so there's always going to be water, water being the analogy for the mind. It can never not exist. So that purity, that potential is always there. And that's what they mean by Buddha nature. Don't mystify it, It's just the words they use. It's natural. So we've got to think about this because it's not the view of our mind now. Oh my God, it's got nothing to do with our view about the mind now. Well, our mind's our brain. We know it's not pure, it's yucky stuff. We tried cutting bits of it out back in the 30s, doing lobotomies. It didn't work. So to even think about any of Buddha's views, it's just going to be nonsense if you can't posit the possibility that it ain't your brain. And Buddha's saying, our mind is naturally clear. That means it's what it is. It wasn't pure once, and then we lost it. That's a very common view. I know I had my talk with when I had my discussions with my Jesuit priest friend. This is a big, they all say, you were made in the likeness of God. God kind of tested us, and then we failed. Isn't it? Well, for the Buddhist view, that's an impossibility. Utterly impossible. Because if God is perfect, and I'm using that term for perfection, goodness, omniscience, omnipotence, all loving, all compassionate, Buddha calls that energy Buddha. Same qualities. I had to give a talk at a Catholic university in Melbourne a few years ago, and I didn't, up till about the minute I had to give the 20-minute talk, I didn't know what to talk about. Then I thought, oh, okay, I'll talk about the similarity between the definition of God and Buddha. So I looked up the Merriam-Webster dictionary and got the definition. God has three qualities. Infinite wisdom, called omniscience. Infinite compassion, infinite power. That's the definition of a Buddha. So Buddha agrees, superior being, except he says everybody can become one, that's all. Big difference. And you don't need to create, and there's not one who does the creating. That's kind of dualistic for the Buddha. Each of us is potentially a superior being. We make ourselves a perfect being. We don't need creating. So I gave that talk, whether the Catholics liked it or not, I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. So the thing is here, what was I saying? No, that's not the talk. The reason, Buddha nature, thank you, yeah, okay. So what Buddha's saying is, that he has discovered from his own experience, using this marvellous technique these Indians invented before him, to completely subdue the craziness, the chaos, the stuff that we believe is all we are, the crazy thoughts and the sensory, to access consciousness beyond that level. It is not mystical. The techniques are all there for anybody who wants to go off and do them. Take a couple of years minimum. Could take you 20 years, but it's there for anybody who wants to try. To be able to access these subtler levels. Now, that's not that you don't get enlightened doing that. That's just a technique. You've just sort of accessed your microscope. Now you have to use it to do the job of the developing insight, of removing the rubbish. But that's a fundamental necessity to get this clarity. And so then you can begin to at least taste the potential of your own mind. This bliss, this clarity. And he means it's sincere. They say bliss, joy, good feelings are naturally there, to the extent to which your mind is not polluted. So it's like the water. You can have a glass of water that's absolutely putrid with pollution. So we know the job isn't to get more pure H2O and sort of inject it into the water, hoping it'll make the pollution go away. No, it won't. The H2O is already there. You need to identify the pollution and extract it. That's what the job is here. You have to identify the delusions and extract them. And what you're left with is your own bliss, your own clarity, your own purity, your own joy, your own virtue. These are at the core of our being. This is what Buddha means by Buddha nature. Okay, the pure one, that's right, the Catholic priest, my friend, the Jesuit. This idea that a being who possesses omniscience, omnipotence, and infinite compassion, perfection, Buddha would agree with that, potential, but everyone's got it. For that being to be able to create another being, that's no problem. You read all the Buddhist literature, even the lowest level bodhisattva is capable of manifesting their own mind in at least 100 different forms simultaneously. In other words, they can create other beings. That's how it sounds. It looks like that. But that being would never be another being. That being would always simply be a manifestation of Buddha, even though it looks like a dog. They can do this. They do this depending on sentient beings. But that dog would never be a dog. It looks like a dog, acts like a dog, pees like a dog, dies like a dog. Could even be a bad-tempered dog. It is only a Buddha. But it looks like a dog. It's the Buddha mind manifesting for the benefit of sentient beings. Okay, I know this sounds cosmic, but this is all in the Bodhisattva teachings. So the lowest level Bodhisattva can already manifest their pure consciousness in any form they like, because they can manipulate the energies of the universe now. They're beyond all the ridiculous laws of nonsense. They've gone beyond delusions, beyond nonsense. They can manipulate the energies of the universe and manifest their own mind in whatever form they like. And then the Buddha can do it infinitely. This is all in the teachings. It's all there in the literature. The methods to do this. Everyone can achieve this. This is the Buddhist approach. So therefore, the concept that a God can make me and then test me and then I fail and sin and I've cut myself off from God, that is an impossibility. And my Jesuit priest friend here, they have many discussions about that. It doesn't make sense. Because the point is this, okay, not the point, I always say the point is all the point. The only way to understand this, it takes time, but this is what we've been saying about back to the beginning about the delusions being based in being misconceptions. It seems abstract to us. You see a person wild with anger and you say that they're experiencing lots of misconceptions. It sounds like hilarious, you know. What are you talking about? They're having deep emotions. Well, let's look at this. So when we understand this aspect of the Buddha's view of the mind, like I said with the very beginning when I talked about the cup, you know, it's just an object of the senses, is not a pretty cup. It's just merely shape and colour. Pretty cup is a concept, a viewpoint, an opinion in my mind. Well, this mind of ours has billions of opinions in it, billions of thoughts. So when we can understand this conceptual business, how these thoughts are these emotions are conceptually based, then we can understand how you can remove them from your mind. And once you understand if God is perfect, Buddha is perfection, and that means all the delusions have been gone. Okay, they don't ever say Buddha was deluded. God was deluded, but Buddha would say we've all been deluded, including a Buddha, and then you become a Buddha. Whereas that concept is shocking for Christians. God is always perfect, has always been perfect. There are no causes for God, and it's that view that Buddha argues with. He says ordinary beings can become Buddha. Now I think that may be a monstrous sin of pride for a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, that you're ordinary and you can become God. You'd never say that. You might be oneness with God. God might be in you, but to say that I'm going to become God, I think you're a bit nervous. That's very naughty. That's the Buddha's point. So we kind of put up there as something shocking to think I can become it. But the Buddha says every one of us can become it. Can you hear that point? So a being who is a Buddha pervades the universe, knows everything, is omniscient, has infinite compassion, has infinite power to do whatever needs to be done for eons to benefit sentient beings. That's a Buddha. And they were a regular guy like Hitler before. So Hitler can become a Buddha. No probs, as we say in Australia. Are we communicating? So we've got to get our head around this concept because it's not how we think. It's not how the Christians think or the Jews. Maybe the Jews. I'm not sure, you people. You never tell me what you think. Every 30 years I've been doing teaching, all right, doing my best, and I've been 30 years meeting Jews, and 30 years I'm just no clearer. They all got different views about what heaven is, what hell is, who made you, where you go afterwards. Is it really? I mean, really and truly, it fascinates me. I met one time in where was it? Florida. It was a part of a seminar. There was me, a Jew, a Lutheran, and a Catholic. 4 of us. Pardon? It's like a joke. This is not a joke. This is a serious event. There were 4 of us. There were 4 of us, right? And the topic was, why do bad things happen to good people? I mean, it's a great question. And of course, Buddhist is easy to answer. Karma. So I blah, blah, blah. So but I had to be... The Catholic and the Lutheran, I have to say, with respect, I didn't have a clue what they were saying. The reason. I couldn't get their answer at all. But the rabbi, he was there, he was the last. He clapped when I talked. Yeah, he said, we agree. And all the Jews in the audience were gobsmacked, I think. He said, we have karma too. Of course, it must not be, it's obviously not a Hebrew word. Other Jews I say that's nonsense, you know. So everybody have to talk to who you talk to. But this fellow, he was so funny. He's from Israel. He said my mother would not have one bad word about the Arabs in our house. She'd chuck them out, you know. And he said we have a saying. He used to crack jokes. He cracked jokes about Hitler. I've never heard a Jew crack jokes about Hitler. I'm sorry. Oh, you do? Well, I haven't done it in my years anyway. Okay, I'm very happy you cracked jokes about him. So anyway, he said he was funny. He laughed. He cracked jokes. You know, he's a really wonderful man. I'd never met a Kabbalah Jew before. So he said, we have a saying. Every time something bad happens, you go, great, one less debt to repay. So that's a view, and this is what I find interesting. You know, when you look at people who are fundamentalists, whether they're a communist, a materialist, a Jew, or a Catholic, you get my point. Fundamentalism is narrow-minded, very fixed, very concrete, very nervous, very scary people. Do you understand? Very ignorant. That's ignorance in Buddha's view. That's deep ignorance. We know it can be in any view at all. You get a fundamentalist, they're miserable people, aren't they? I mean, aren't they miserable people? Long face, suffering, everything's hellfire and brimstone, fear. I mean, unbelievable. But you get a person like that guy, he was funny, he cracked jokes, he was light and funny, you know. So anybody who's got some semblance of, whether it's faith in God, genuine, light, or a view of karma, they're relaxed, you know. There's no sort of heavy drama. He was cracking jokes. He was really such a nice man. One less debt to repay, he said. So anyway, my point here is this. Several points. I want to try to stay on topic. I need an editor in my head, I tell you. I'm doing my best to be my own editor. It's hard. Okay, so listen. This whole business, the Buddha says that our mind is naturally pure. It doesn't mean you are pure once. This is the point now. This point. It doesn't mean you are perfectly pure once, which is what the Christians would say. That God made you. You were pure, perfect. And then you got impure. Because the Buddha's point is this. Once you've... If we use this idea about all the, the idea of the seeds are burned. If ego grasping, the root delusion, which is the source of all the others, which is a misconception, which we're going to now talk about, how they're misconceptions. And just like I'm saying, when we understand they're all misconceptions, that tells us how we can get rid of them. So once your mind is pure, that means you've burned all the seeds. You've burned ego grasping. You've finally seen the truth. And once that's happened, you can never fall back again. That's why the first second of realizing emptiness, the first second of seeing the reality that there never has been, isn't and could be this nonsense I. Once you've got that, you can never fall back after that. That's when you've burned the seed of delusions and samsara. So you can only go forward to enlightenment. So therefore, you can never, never, ever, 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 logically, ever be deluded again. So the idea that you've been pure once and then you've lost it, then why bother trying so hard and then lose it again? Don't waste your time, It's a really crucial point to understand. So, a simple analogy, okay? Simple example. What happened to it? There it is. Got it. Oh, wrong way. There we go, thanks. So listen, simple example. You say to me, what is that colour? And I say, blue. And you say, don't be silly, Robina, it's yellow. I thought, I forgot. You're absolutely right, it's yellow. Now, that's a possibility. It's an easy concept, isn't it? So, do you agree that is blue is a thought? Yeah, isn't it? And do you agree that is yellow is a thought? Yeah? And do you agree in ordinary conventional reality, a thought, it ought to be in sync with some external, some object. True mind, thoughts have to be valid, and thoughts are expressed through words. Otherwise, we're in trouble. That's why we're in trouble, because the thoughts we have aren't in sync with reality, Buddha says. So if then I say, you're absolutely right. So, okay, it is blue is a thought. It is yellow is a thought. We all know from conventional reality, yellow is correct answer. Conventionally. So now, this is the point. What happened when I said, you're right, it's yellow. What happened to the other thought? What happened to the thought, it is blue? What happened to it? It's a simple question. What happened to it? Huh? Disappeared. Keep saying more words. It went away, didn't it? It's gone, hasn't it? It's gone, vanished. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that? It's vanished. Now this is the question. What made it vanish? And which thought? The right thought. That is how you get enlightened. I'm literally accurate. That's how you get enlightened. By arguing, using the wisdom thoughts in us, that's what we've got access to, our intelligent thoughts, our clear thoughts, our wise thoughts, our virtuous thoughts, using all those thoughts to argue with the maniacs in there, the wrong thoughts, the crazy thoughts, the root delusion, the attachment thoughts, the anger thoughts that have made up their own absurd, exaggerating, distorted nonsense stories over eons, which is why they're so entrenched, which is why we don't even know they're wrong. But and this is what practice is, day by day by day, more and more, as you get more progress, more practice, more purification practices, more concentration, better logic, better analysis. This is the job of a yogi. Not sitting there spacing out in the sky. You're using all your wisdom thoughts to argue with your garbage thoughts, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more refined, until finally you've cut the root thought. And from that second, you can move forward. You can never fall back after that. So it's a practical, logical process. It's just very sophisticated, demands enormous discipline, enormous clarity, enormous wisdom, enormous hard work, enormous perseverance. Every sentient being can do it. Every sentient being naturally possesses this potential. And that's what sustains the bodhisattvas to never give up. It's natural. This is natural, Buddha says. And it's got zero to do with someone rewarding or punishing or giving it to you or anything like that. Nothing. You do the work, baby. You rely on the Buddha. You rely on marvelous people. You do the work. We do the work. We have to do the work. This is how you become a Buddha. So, of course, it's a big model. It's a big concept. We've got to look into it. And don't just rush in. You see, one of the big points that I find really important, we say, well, how can I believe in reincarnation? How can I believe in karma? How can I believe in this, blah, blah, blah. We talk like that all the time. Well, no one said it here. Maybe you're too scared to say it because I keep saying, don't say belief. It's okay, I'm joking. But it's natural. Whereas we don't say, how can I believe Einstein? We don't say that. How can I believe that recipe is right? We don't ever say that. We know the information is there, and we use our own intelligence and we look into it, and slowly we prove each step of the way it's true. That we understand. That's called learning. But for some reason we think it's different when it comes to this stuff, It's exactly the same. So my point is this. Because we think religion is mystical, is coming from God, therefore beyond, therefore not provable, therefore not knowable, and that's okay if you have faith in God. You don't need to know what God's plan is because you have faith in Him. I am not criticizing that. That is a blissful way to live your life. God's got a plan and that makes you feel better. But the materialist one, there's no plan yet. That's why we're so scared and freaked out in the materialist world. No one's got a plan. No one knows what the hell is going on. At least you have faith in God. You know He's got a plan. And I think that's fantastic. Well, that's not Buddha's view, though. It's better than nothing, I'd say. Not being rude if you believe in God. Please, don't mishear me. So, Buddha's view. I rave on so much I lose the plot. I'm so sorry. What was I saying? Oh, I need some mindfulness. I'm forgetting what I'm saying all the time. What was I about to say? I was getting to the point of the whole conversation this morning, and now I've lost the track. What was I saying? What was I saying? Just before. All the millions of thoughts to use what? Okay. Yeah, okay. All right. God, I'm ridiculous. Okay. Then you start to try and find it and it just goes completely. You can't find anything you said. So I have to just change tack. What? We're discussing how the mind is naturally pure. We're discussing how it's all the nature of everybody. We're discussing how, and it's even better to have faith, and at least you know. Okay, good. Thank you. I've got it. Okay, got it. Okay. So we tend to think of religion as something up there mystical, and it's okay if God has a plan, but if we're not sure about God's plan, then it's just mystical, and no one can know it and prove it. And therefore we tend to think that you can think what you like, because we don't think it's true. Therefore we think it's random. So spiritual, usually you have a spiritual experience. You have a meditation, something spiritual happened. So we think of it as sort of random moments of interesting things. You do a meditation and you cry with compassion. Or I had an experience of compassion. So what I'm getting at is we tend to think of these of spiritual as moments of special things that pop up out of the blue that no one knows the reason for. Do you understand? We think of it this way. So, whereas if you know that you have to learn the piano, learn cooking, learn acupuncture, it's not just you sit at the piano and put your hands on and suddenly some lovely music pops out. Oh, I played a lovely piece of music today. Oh, that's really nice. Would you please play it again? Oh, no, I can't do that. It just sort of came, But we know that you'd be sort of laughed at a bit. It's very nice. But we know that really playing music is you've got to go back to basics, learn all the theories, and then start to play Bach. As I say, example. So what I'm getting at is here. Same thing with say, acupuncture. It's not just a thing of you're all intuitive, and I put a needle there, and oh wow, she got better. You don't think of it. We don't think of it like this. We think it's rigorous. It's lots of theory. You have to learn it slowly. And this is my point now. Any body of knowledge, whether it's cooking or acupuncture or Buddha's view of the universe, if it is valid, if it's valid, not just a random moment of this or that, then first it's got to be coherent first theoretically. We don't think of religion like that. Acupuncture. Anything, music, anything. We know first you've got to squeeze your brain, as Lama Yeshe puts it, and learn all the theories. So we know you could learn all the acupuncture theories. You could be incredible. And you could even teach someone else the theories before you even stick one needle in somebody. That's a possibility. It's not the complete job yet. You've got to stick the needles in. But we know that the theories, and this is the point, when you start to read the theory, first you learn acupuncture, you haven't got a clue what they're saying. You hear a meridian over here and a something over there, and nothing connects. You know that. But as you learn more and more acupuncture, all the dots start to get joined. Well, that means because of this, and therefore this, and because of that. Do you understand? It becomes coherent. It becomes coherent. All bodies of knowledge are coherent. Theoretically. The same here. So don't rush to try and prove reincarnation first. It's like saying, how can I prove relativity? Don't be ridiculous. Well, of course you can. But you've got to start with 1 + 1 is 2. And be humble and patient. This is how you engage. So if Buddhism is a valid system, and it's not just a thing of being mindful, it's not just a question of watching your breath and being mindful and going slowly or something, which is what people think Buddhism is, which is embarrassing, beyond embarrassing. It's this vast world system. Okay, you might not want to do the whole thing. You don't need to, but I'm saying it. It is that. It's a vast world view. So first, if it is valid, it needs to be coherent intellectually. So be content. Even that level of realization, they call it inferential knowledge. That's powerful. That's powerful. In other words, another analogy. They talk about when you study, you go through this process from all the way to realizations from wrong view. Well, a simple example, let's say you've lived in Tel Aviv all your life, you've never been outside Tel Aviv, you've never seen a map, you've never seen Google, you've never heard of anything, and you meet a person from this weird place called Australia. And I tell you it's 24 hours away or whatever it is, on a plane, you think I'm hysterical, you think I'm mad. You've never heard those concepts. Try and imagine. Then you suddenly keep meeting people who've been there. You think, oh, maybe it's... So you start going from wrong view is don't be ridiculous, not possible, when you first hear it, because it's different from what you think. Then you've got an open mind, and that's crucial. You start hearing other people. Wow, well, and then you start going towards doubt. You start to shake a bit your view, but doubt tending towards the wrong view. Well, maybe there is Australia. No, not possible. Then you keep hearing and keep meeting, so you start to shake even more, and you start doing research now. And now you get to wrong view tending towards the wrong doubt tending towards the right view. Well, maybe there is Australia, but you're not confident yet, theoretically. So you keep studying Google, talk to people, look at maps. Of course, it doesn't take too long to prove theoretically, based on other people's words, Google reports, books you read. You get my point now. You can really get to the point where you can prove that Australia exists. Theoretically, that's called inferential knowledge. You've never been there yet, but you can even guide someone else to get there. We know that is true. We know that's true. It's possible. Same with acupuncture. Same with Buddhism. Same with karma. Same with reincarnation. We've got to go one step at a time. But because we're so used to hearing that reincarnation and karma can't be proved, that's the view in materialism, that religion can't be proved. This is like such a rigid view that it's seen as scientific, that it can't be proved. That is beyond hubris. That's the materialist arrogance, beyond arrogant. Who do we think we are, It's the arrogance. For thousands of years, humans have been coming up with amazing views. But not one materialist would even have read one single iota of anything in Indian literature. They just say it's absurd. The arrogance of it, it quite stuns me. But that's how we are, our minds. Whether you're a fundamentalist Christian or Jew or whatever it is, it's the same, same. I'm right, all the rest is wrong. Quite shocking. So the point is, it's got to be theoretically coherent. So be patient and be humble and go one step at a time and be content. So if you know the Buddha's view, like with acupuncture, you can't prove acupuncture by squeezing it into allopathic system. It's another language, another model. You'll never find a meridian in Western medicine, I promise. You've got to put your model away and look into this new model. Take a bunch of new assumptions, new viewpoints, new hypotheses. That's everything is like that, We've got to be intelligent and open-minded. So Buddhism within itself is coherent. Acupuncture within itself is coherent, It's a body of knowledge. Same. So that's up to us. And it's up to how much interest we've got. You don't have to do that. You don't have to jump in the deep end. So the point is here, I'm trying to get to the point. Once we can understand the Buddha's view about the mind, that all our emotions, all our feelings, the emotions and feelings that we talk about, which we experience through our body. That's the sign that we're having feelings. We don't notice we have feelings until it hits our body. That's why you don't know you're depressed until you can't get out of bed one morning. It's taken so long to notice. An angry person can see in a millisecond that they're upset because it comes vomiting out the mouth and their head shakes, the blood races, the spit comes out. It's kind of obvious they're having an emotion. So we don't know what's going on in our mind until it hits the body. And that's why that's when the wheels are falling off. That's why it's too late. So the Buddha's deal is the mind, we've got to go beyond the physical, beyond the sensory, and go into the mind itself. And what are you going to find there? Billions of thoughts. That's it. Billions of thoughts. Billions of thoughts. And they're eons old. And we've built up all these conceptual constructions over eons. Stories, elaborations, distorted. This is the deluded ones, not the virtuous ones. But the virtuous ones are there too. So I like to call them my roommates. Got billions of roommates, okay? And there's not one roommate called I, by the way. It's a really good way to see it. All your roommates are thoughts. Just we give the label I to them all. So don't worry, there's not a roommate in there called I. Just say those words to yourself and it's quite interesting. There's no roommate called I. Don't worry about it. You just got thoughts within this relative reality of this package, you know. So that means Buddha psychology is identifying all those thoughts and dividing them into these three categories. That's all. The ones that are deluded, distorted, neurotic, not based in reality. The ones that are relatively valid and reasonable, that are based in reality. And then those that are the mechanics of the mind that we use to do the job of unpacking and unraveling the contents, to sort out the mess and get rid of the rubbish ones and grow the good ones. That's the job of being a Buddhist. I promise you, that's it. That's it. It just takes a lot of work, a lot of time. And that's where, in Tibetan Buddhism, all these practices we do, all the practices we do, you know, their job is not... Okay, the analogy I like to use for that is, the example is if you play basketball. So you go to basketball for the first time and you hear these amazing people running up and down the court getting balls in the hoop, isn't it? Backwards, upside down, flying in the sky. It looks brilliant and easy, doesn't it? So at the end you go to Michael Jordan. I always use him as the example. I'm sure he's grandfather by now, but whatever. Hey, please show me how to get in the ball and hoop. It looks so exciting. Well, Robina, I want you to go away and study for 10 years basketball theories and go to college and do this and go on a diet and learn that and have nutrition and learn to jog and run and bounce balls and get fit. No, Michael, you didn't hear me. How do I get the ball in the hoop? You get my point? He'll repeat his answer. So if you see a person jogging, you will never know that they're practicing so they can get the ball in the hoop. If you see a person doing on a diet, you can't tell they're going to get a ball in the hoop. You see a person bouncing a ball, you don't know they're doing that to get a ball in the hoop. The bottom line of basketball is the biggest number of balls in the hoop, right? That's basketball. Everything else is a preliminary to get you to get the ball in the hoop. Do you understand that point? Well, the job is to work on your mind. That's getting the ball in the hoop. All your prostrations, all your mandalas, all your vows, all your living in vows, all your praying to the Buddhas, all your mantras, all your prostrations, all the water bowls, all of this stuff, which of course is culture. There is nothing else but culture. Culture is what humans do in groups. It's not set in stone. You get my point? It's just culture. How people work is behavior. So things have developed over the centuries. You know, you can see yourself. I'm sure Judaism as a religion has developed this way in this country and that way in this country. Look at Christianity. A Southern Baptist and a Russian Orthodox, you can't see anything similar. It's culture. But what's the essence of it? So the culture, so what I'm saying is all those things are just, this is Tibetan culture coming from Indian culture. They're the things they've cultivated over the centuries, the methods to help. And this is the part that maybe takes us time to think, which is why it sounds like religion. All of those practices are related to the Buddha, to enlightened beings. So the way they say enlightened beings exist, a Buddha exists. Consciousness is beginningless and endless, okay? They can never finish. So when a mind becomes a Buddha mind, it's existing and has this infinite power to help others. That's its job. So they're all bopping around the universe dying to help. You just have to be asked, that's all. This is how they talk about it. That's why prayer in Buddhism is completely valid. Prayer in, I don't know, however it is in Judaism, in Christianity, God's the boss, you pray, whatever, that relationship. You have a relationship with the Buddhas, but not as your creator. Your relationship with your Buddha is like your Kung Fu teacher. You ask them, please show me Kung Fu, and they teach you Kung Fu. And then you internalize their Kung Fu and become your own Kung Fu master. That's your relationship with the Buddha. like a doctor. They give you the methods, you do it. So you do, of course you pray. Pray is just please, or pray is may. Prayer in Buddhism is often just aspirations, May this, may beings be happy, may I get enlightened. And because every thought counts, it's reasonable. It's not just cross your fingers and hope for the best. So it's got validity psychologically. So all of those practices are the jogging and the going on the diet and learning how to bounce balls. They're the preliminary practices. That's what they call them. To do preliminary to what? Work it on your mind, baby. That's getting the ball in the hoop, You with me? And we take those on as and when we wish. Now, many Buddhist systems don't have any of that. That's up to us to find the system that works for us. But there's logic to any of these things. Tsongkhapa says, our lineage Lama, 14th century lineage Lama of our tradition, he says in one lovely poetic text called the Hymns of Experience, all the teachings, the words in the books, the words coming out of the mouths of a person who's a valid teacher, are to be taken as sound advice, because there is no contradiction between scripture and practice. Well, that's like saying, in that cookbook, every word in this book is necessarily practical. It's advice, how to make cakes. Because there's no contradiction between what's written and the cake. Can you hear that? That's when knowledge is valid. Now that's the trouble with religion. People go to a meditation class, get a vision, have a feeling, and write a book about it. And we don't ever think, is it valid or not? It's really embarrassing. I mean, so much junk in every religion is published because we think it doesn't matter. You have to show your credentials because everyone can think what they like. It's so irresponsible, misleading human beings. It's quite shocking. There's a story about this American Indian guy. I mean, not American Indian, Indian American. From India, who lives in America. He's actually the ex-boyfriend of a friend of mine, but I heard about some video he made about his experience. He could see how people just believe in religion. So he started an ashram and pretended to be a Hindu guru, purposely, to prove how idiotic people are. I mean, it's a bit mean of him maybe, but it was maybe a good motive. And everybody started having faith in him and asking him to be their guru. They hadn't checked on him. He looked like a guru. It looked like a Hindu ashram. It had the signs of it. Oh, he must be valid. I mean, that shows how awful, embarrassing it is, isn't it? No one checked. And there's very common stories like that. Anyway, so if the big picture Buddhism, the whole worldview is valid, it's got to be first valid if theoretically. And that's how you enter into it, That's how you enter into it. And you're the boss, you're the one. People often say, even I remember saying in one of the centres where they have all this philosophical study, and they're learning all the different Buddhist schools, and even one of the students said, well, how do I know who to believe? Even about emptiness in the different schools of Buddhism. And I was shocked. What do you mean believe, honey? You're up to you. You've got to prove it. And that's hard work. We'd rather believe. It's a lot easier. But then we can blame somebody when it goes wrong, isn't it? Whereas if you've proven it yourself, there's no one to blame, So we're the boss. We're the one who has to do it. Go one step at a time. Be humble about it. It's perfectly comfortable to take reincarnation and mind and karma as a hypothesis. I mean, it's just that we don't want to and don't like to or feel embarrassed because the world will laugh at us. Well, you don't have to tell anybody. Relax. It's your own mind, Relax. So, okay, in this model of the mind, we have these three categories of states of mind. Those that are the chaos, disturbing, distorted, exaggerating, embellishments that are not in sync with reality. This is the crucial quality of all of these states of mind that have the characteristic of being deeply disturbing. And the words are simple, like I said. Buddha hasn't changed his tune in 2,500 years, There's no new view of Buddha's psychology. Except these words which seem simple, the understanding of how they function increases as we develop our own practice. And as Lama Yeshe said, I can tell you about attachment for a whole year. You'll never begin to understand it until you start working inside. So you've got to learn the theory first. It's like, you learn the simple theory of that music. It'll take you 20 years to perfect it. And every time you play it a bit better. The knowledge of it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. We understand that. Same here. Got to start with the theory. Start with the recipe, So like I said, there's thousands. Buddha talks about there being 72,000 different negative states of mind, all the infinite variations of all the main ones. But like I said, we can come down to 3. And then a couple more after that, The root delusion, ego grasping, the biggest, most primordial, deeply entrenched lie of all. The one that, a conception in the mind, deep down, that believes there's an intrinsic, separate, pointable, findable, concrete, solid, real, little, precious me in there that runs the show. Something like that. This is absolutely implicit. And this, on the basis of that, the entirety of samsara has been created. All the suffering, all the realms of existence, all as Buddha would assert from his own experience. All these trillions of sentient beings. Therefore karma, mistaken actions based on these delusions, therefore doing this, therefore harming that, therefore this, therefore that. All of this, and the way, and again, technically it's described, the way in the Vajrayana model, they talk about how, I mentioned this, the whole universe consists of minds and matter. And this, in the Vajrayana model, this is what the Tibetan medical system is based on, this knowledge, all minds are inextricably linked to our own set of the 4 elements. So your Tibetan doctor, like the Chinese, she'll feel your pulses. And they learn all these different, there's 72,000 subtle channels in here, according to this model. And coursing through these channels, all these different wind energies, which are all linked to the intricate system of wind energies. I think in the Middle Ages, that's how we talked about health then. But now we talk about it differently in the modern world, All these millions of wind energies, all of their own way they function, to do this and that, and the up and the down one, and this one and that one. And all these winds are intimately linked with all our different states of mind. Clearly this is not how we talk, And that they're coursing through these different channels with these different winds. As they say, the mind rides on the winds. So your Tibetan doctor will feel your pulses, and she'll notice an imbalance of certain wind energy, which is related to attachment. That's why you're having panic attacks. That's the anxiety, She'll notice other wind energies that are linked to anger, which is why you have so many dramas. Each of the winds is linked to the different states of mind. This is the model. All the states of mind have their own wind energies. It's an extremely intricate system, So the yogis in the Vajrayana model, that's when we become intimately familiar with all these different channels and the winds, intimately, internally, through meditation and through external knowledge, learning about all these winds. And these minds, states of mind, every time they do any action, we do an intention of anger, and therefore killing. That's the mind that starts it. That pollutes the winds. And then the body and the speech do it, which then creates the causes to connect with that being again, to have that thing happen again. It's a highly intricate, but it's a logical presentation of this in this model, of how it all works. So one thing Lama Zopa said I saw in one teaching, which was kind of helpful hint. He said in the Kala Chakra Tantra, there are these detailed descriptions of the intimate relationship between internal and external energy. Well, internal is the mind, external, even this, is the elements. The universe only consists of the elements and the minds, that's it, speaking simply. And they're all beginningless. They're all beginningless. This universe did indeed begin at some point, where it was subtle wind energy, the imploded previous universes. And all of this, then the way the universes manifest is due to the karma of sentient beings. So as Lama Zopa said, if the mind, let's say, is angry, it pollutes those wind energies, and that sows seeds in the mind, and pollutes the wind, and then later on you get reborn, you've got the karma to be sick. Sickness, a sick body, unbalanced physical energies is the fruit of negativity. Your own negativity. You've polluted your own physical energy, which you carry through with you after next life with the subtle energy. It doesn't get lost. None of the imprints of anything we've done gets lost, and the subtle wind energies are there too, containing all this. And then you manifest in the new womb, and then you get sick body. And then in turn, karmically, as Rinpoche says, over much longer time, that negative energy manifests and affects the external elements, which is the environment. It's all explained in the literature, highly detailed, So even the universe is under some accident. Every action can have these 4 ways it manifests, the results. So non-killing. the tendency to the strong karma of not intentional non-killing, practice in the context of the vow to not kill, and I want to talk more about karma today, has 4 results. The main result is a type of rebirth, and in this case it would be, let's say, example, human rebirth, the fruit of virtue, the fruit of non-killing. First. Second, within that mind, there is you could be born with the tendency not to kill, which is the second track of karma. So killing first brings the type of rebirth. Non-killing also brings the tendency to keep non-killing, to keep not killing. You're born with it, like the little boy crying with compassion for the lice. Third way non-killing will ripen is that the next kind of karma, which is called experiences similar to the cause, will be that you will not get killed and you won't die young. That's the result of non-killing experientially. And then out there, at the furthest out, is the environment. You will live in a very delicious environment. The food is delicious, the water is pure, the air is not polluted, and the food will nourish you and you'll be fat and healthy. So look at the opposite. You're born as a human, but you've got a tendency to kill. You've got, you die young or you get killed. Look at the world. Look at the human planet. All the humans with a human body, that's due to non-killing, one track of karma. The next lot is the tendency, but to kill. Look at the humans. Most humans kill something. Most. Even most religions say it's cool to kill. That's the next kind of karma, in the tendencies in the mind. From the residual result from leftover killing. The residual result from previous killing and previous being in the lower realms. Because you didn't purify it, and that's what we have to talk about today. So the next kind of karma of non-killing, of killing, is that you get killed or you die young. That's why I said that one. So the first is the human body. In this case, we've got a human body. Non-killing. Next one, tendency to kill, killing. Next one, dying young, getting killed, killing karma. Next one, environmental, polluted, harmful to you. It affects you, it harms you. You've got allergies, you can't eat peanuts, the air is polluted, water polluted, food is not nourishing, food is horrible. That's the result of killing. Every action has these kinds of 4 results. Every single thing we do has these 4 kinds of results. And it's all due to being's own actions, not to punishment and reward. It's a natural law. So the realms of existence, which seems very abstract to us, of course it does. They're just, within samsara, okay, all the universes, there are enlightened beings, and then there are ordinary beings. And within those, you've got then all different levels. You've got, great bodhisattvas who are even out of samsara. They're not going to fall back, but they're still not fully developed as Buddhas yet. But you've got, basically within samsara, you've got this 3, they talk about, this is very much coming from the Hindu teachings, they've got a couple of these types of beings they talk about, form and formless realm. They're beings who are in the deepest absorption of meditation. So let's forget them. The one that we're in is called the desire realm, which is, sentient beings based on attachment. And within this realm of existence, there's like 6 suburbs, And all of the experiences of all these beings is on a spectrum of happiness and suffering, which is on a spectrum of whether attachment gets what it wants or doesn't. So the experience in our desire realm of attachment getting what it wants is bliss and joy. So if you're rich and got a good reputation, have a beautiful wife, and you've got gorgeous children, you've got money in the bank, and you've got lovely food, you've got good health, we call that like happiness, And it's the fruit of masses of virtue, but because it's what attachment is getting what it wants. So then, of course, we think it's permanent, lasts for eternity, and of course it won't. You'll die, She'll leave you, you'll get cancer. Whatever. It doesn't last. That's the part of the deal. So the top end, though, even further than that, that's in the humans. Within this whole spectrum of samsara, sentient beings like you and me, whose minds are beginningless and endless, the ones who got this in the peak of samsara, well, not quite the peak, the form ones, those, forget them. The desire ones, they call the best suburb the God realms. It's just like the equivalent of paradise and heaven. These are experiences, okay, of minds. No one made them. Beings experiencing them are the creators of them. from their past actions. So lots and lots of virtue, of goodness, of kindness, not necessarily spiritual practice, but just being good and moral, will result in bliss and joy. The physical energies are very pure, so our 4 elements will manifest as a subtle light body. The mind will be blissful. The karmic appearances, because everything we have out there is our own karmic appearances. The way things appear to us, who we meet, what they do to us, how we see things, ugly, beautiful, delicious, that's all due to our past karma. We created it. It's not like we've been plonked on this planet and bad things and good things happen unfairly, which is how we think. It's you're meeting your own past, you know. Everything is like that. They call it, as Lama Zopa says, we're experiencing our own karmic appearances. So God realm's karmic appearance is bliss, joy. It's mental. It's all mental. It's the mind. It's a real place. Mentally, there's no place you can't fly on an aeroplane there. It's like what they call in science fiction. It's a different dimension. It's exactly like that. Karmic, you know, that's how it is. God realms, couple of them. Further down, there's the humans. Now we can see we have not got light bodies, I promise. We've got this bag of bones, you know. But nevertheless, a human body is the fruit of virtue. And the saving grace of a human life, this is why Buddhism says it's the best rebirth to get, best of a bad lot, because we've got intelligence and virtue. And we're not so blissed out that we know we're suffering, you know, so we can really start taking care of it. Then you've got the result of delusions, the result of negative karma, and they're each of them, these lower realms as they call, they're all states of mind, they're all living real beings who've got beginningless mind, who've got Buddha nature, but due to their negative actions got a animal birth, spirit birth, hell birth. And these are manifestations of the 3 main delusions. All of this is psychological. All of this is the mind. These are not made by somebody. That's the weirdest idea for the Buddha. The weirdest idea. We make them. We create them. Their own karmic visions. Animals is a predominance of ignorance. So Lama Zopa said one time, if we could just have for a moment a direct experience of the mind of our little doggy woggy. He didn't say doggy woggy. The mental suffering would be beyond bearing. You could never wish to waste another second of this precious human life. Now that is, that shows, I would suggest that's the mind of a yogi who can see that. The depth of the subtlety of these great beings, what they can observe and see, you know, because they've discovered it themselves. We would never think our dog is suffering, would we? Only when they get hurt. We don't see their mind, you see. The suffering is so intense, it would be unbearable just to have for a moment of experience of it. That's a pretty intense concept. So animals have, all sentient beings. Buddhist psychology refers to all these sentient beings. All these sentient beings. And we're just different expressions of these different delusions and virtues, that's all. So human, at least we can access some of our virtue. That's our saving grace. But we have all the same delusions. Animals can't access their virtue. The karma is such that due to heavy negative karma, at the time of their death, a negative action, let's say killing, ripened, and they went to a dog womb, you know, and got a dog body. A dog body that suits the mind. And that means they've got potential, they've got Buddha nature, they've got all the marvelous qualities, things they've done in the past as a human, as virtuous, it's all there but buried. They can't access it beyond the forest of their delusions. And they're driven by the most profound ego grasping. Our ego grasping is bad enough. We live in fear. Theirs is 1 billion times more intense, 1 billion times more shocking, 1 billion times more suffering. This is what the Buddhist yogis would say, the Buddha would say. Animal birth. And we can see there's an awful lot of them. Not just the elephants and the kangaroos, but look at the insects, the bugs, you know. The whole world is pervaded by them. They're living in our body. There's trillions of them. All experiencing the fruits of their own past actions. Then further down, even more suffering, even more numbers are what they call spirits. Beings who are disembodied, but who are driven by, they're the predominance of grasping energy, attachment, 1 trillion times more powerful than ours. And nightmarish experiences, all kinds of experiences. But predominance of attachment energy. Then you've got the worst suburbs of all, the most occupied, the worst suffering of all, hell beings. So all of these beings, their minds are conjoined with their 4 elements. So you could argue, in the way they describe it, all the literature and all the religions sound similar, the mind is conjoined with fire energy. You could say that. You could argue the spirits, their mind is conjoined with air energy. Animals and humans were pretty similar. You know, walking sewers. Our minds are conjoined with walking sewers, basically. And the shape of our body, whether you have a fish with a big mouth or pink or this or that or a bird or wings or fly or walk or talk or whatever, that's due to past actions. All of it is programming that we have done. We are the architects, the creators of our own body, own mind. This is the meaning of karma. This is how karma is, you know. We all do it to ourselves. We are our own creators over eons and eons of lifetimes. No one does it to us. We do it to ourselves. Every bit of our body, the way it is, why this is all because of certain actions. This is, and all our programming, how we come this, that, with 5 fingers here, or maybe a thumb that way, and this way, and that elbow that way, and a pain in this knee and this ear, and that going this way. Eyes, my eyes are crossed. You know, one eye goes right in. All of this is due to past actions that have programmed our mind, that impacted upon the physical. So yeah, we have a mummy who's got a tendency to get cancer. Due to our past killing, we get born to that mummy. Due to being good at music, I got born to a good musician mummy. Everything is due to our past actions. That's it. And it's a massive, it's dealt with an enormous, it's all in the literature, it's all there from the experience of the holy beings. It's all there. Available to whoever wants to look at it and take it as your hypothesis. And then for your own experience, see the truth of it yourself. And if you do discover it's wrong, then thank you, Buddha will be very happy to hear it. You must reject Buddha then, if he's wrong. Of course you would. You have to find out. We're the boss. So all of this is created by thoughts. This sounds beyond hilarious to us, you know. And these thoughts, the way Lama Zopa says, they impact upon the wind energies, which impact upon the external, which affect the external, and over many lifetimes even affect the environment, you know. The environment is not just accidental. The environment is not from a creator. It's the fruit, the expression, the result of collective actions of sentient beings. All universes are the result of the actions of sentient beings. That's Buddha's view. I think I've talked a bit long today. What time is it? Okay, anybody want any questions now? Yes. Yes, sweetheart, yes.
I realize that we're very lucky to be born in a human life.
Yes.
What happens if in a previous life we kill and
Yes.
then we're reborn as a dog or
Yes.
a fly or a
Yes,
mosquito?
exactly.
How then can we have the idea of being virtuous?
You can't. That's the tragedy.
So how do you get out of...
The karma runs out. We've been animals countless times, so we can deduce we've gotten out of it, and it's sort of like just the conditions have to come together. You know, I mean, use a simple example. You have a dog, a cat?
Of course.
Okay then. Oh, of course. That's interesting. That's an interesting answer, isn't it? So, okay. Well, due to that animal's karma, it's got some karmic connection personally with you. And let's say here you are, you go to Buddhist classes or whatever, and it might see a picture of the Buddha, it might hear a Buddhist mantra, it might hear virtuous things. So that leaves the imprints in its mind due to its past karma. It's born a dog, but it's got imprints of this stuff. And especially at the time of its death, if you say mantras to it, let it hear these things, because everything stays there, that'll connect the being with enlightened beings and with virtue, and one of that will trigger at the time of his death a virtuous karmic seed that'll give him a human birth. So it's got to meet the right conditions. So it's also karma sort of runs out. You know, have a relationship with one person that could last 60 years. Some relationships last a year. You wonder what happened. It's all over, you know. So karma's a bit like that. It's got a certain amount of life, amount of petrol in the tank. So life after life. Okay, let's say, okay, the fisherman example, the little boy. Remember that story? When I told you the story about the Geshe Lama Kontrok, what he said, didn't I? Did I? You were here? Yeah. So we can deduce with him that he'd been born in the lower realms in the past, but that karma ran out. I mean, it's very complex, because on the one hand, say he got an animal birth one life due to past killing, and then every second he's creating more karmas for more future lives, but at the same time he's got other karmas he's experiencing, so it's really highly complex. So eventually the whole track of it runs out, and one day, like a miracle, he gets a human body. And Then he gets mummy born to mummy in California. He's got good tendencies, he's got good qualities, he's got good experience, he's got good environment, but he's got a tendency to kill. Now this is the point here. The tragedy is the karma ran out of that lot of killing, so he gets a non-killing result, a human body. But the tragedy is he's born with a tendency to kill because he hasn't fully finished the karma. When you've finished the lower realms, that's the finish of the completing the main karma, but there's the residual result left over to keep doing it or have it done to you, which happened to him. So the little boy who has compassion for the lice, we can deduce that he lived in vows in the past of non-killing. So he's also been in the lower realms, but because by vowing never to kill again and by purifying it, which I want to talk about today, then you really complete the karma. So he was born with a tendency only not to kill, and that's the difference. So then when that little boy saw the fishing, it triggered his karmic imprint and off it went again, and he went straight back to the lower realms. That's the tragedy. Yeah.
And spirits,
Yes.
if they have no physical body,
That's right.
what can they do about their karma?
They can't either. Same thing. Any in the lower realms is nothing you can do in that state. But you've got like us. We've been in the lower realms, or like that fisherman. The same idea. We've all got millions of karmic. We've got millions of virtuous karmas from the past. We've had high realizations. We've all been able to have the siddhis of being able to fly. We've been clairvoyant in the past. We've done so much in the past. It runs out, we go to the lower realms again. That runs out, we come to the higher realms again. That runs out, we go to the lower realms again, like ridiculous yo-yos, you know. So the key is, the seeds are all there. In the hell beings, in Hitler, there are all these good seeds from a million lives ago that haven't yet ripened. His negative karma will run out one day and he'll get a human birth again. So unless you use that properly to have all the conditions, I mean, look at how, it's pretty rare. No, it's not being arrogant, you know. I don't care whether you call yourself a Jew or a materialist. If we're born in a human body with tendency to be moral and with some kind of conscience, that's a pretty rare commodity on this planet with respect to humans. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, many humans, the suffering alone is so intense, they've got no chance to think of anything. So to have not only a good human life, not only to have enough money in the bank to have a house and a bit of breath to breathe, but to even have access to morality and to try and think about, that's a rare coming together of a lot of conditions. And that's precious. So that's why the Buddhist view is, at least we've got that, use it as much as we can. And that's why the animal as an animal can't do anything. The spirit as a spirit can't do anything. The hell being as a hell being, because the karma is so intense, but the karma of virtue is still in their mind. And they've got to wait for the conditions to come together for the virtue to ripen again, which is sad, at least. Do you understand? Okay. Anybody else? Other questions about this? Even if you think it's a load of rubbish, it doesn't matter. Say something. I'll only shout at Shuki. Don't worry about it. And Tal. I promise. What else? Yes, sweetheart.
If, as you said, I think the cup is blue.
Yes.
And then everybody says it's yellow. And yeah, it's yellow. And you say there is no going back from that. But what if I go to sleep and I forget?
Well, okay, I understand your point. Yeah, sure. Okay, that's a simple example. That's a simple example of thoughts and wrong thoughts and right thoughts. Just a simple example. The only one that you don't go back from, the Buddha says, is when you've cut the root of the root delusion of the inherent I. It's only then when you've cut that you can't fall back. But we've had high realizations. We've had bodhicitta before maybe, and we've lost that. So you can lose it all, but not permanently. But you can't, once you realize emptiness and you cut that root thought out, you can't ever lose that. And that might sound abstract, but the more we understand the way it works, the more that makes sense. That's the root. That's what they say. Because you're right, of course you can forget. We forget most stuff. But the imprint is still there, luckily. Do you understand? What else, people? Just have a... Yes, Betty.
If there is no I from its inherent side,
Yep.
what is... Who... There's no...
The conventional I.
Okay.
That's the answer. But Betty, the trouble is, that doesn't mean anything to us now, but it's necessary to hear it, and then the more we understand the teaching, the more it will make sense. But it's kind of subtle, quite subtle. As Lama Zopa says, when you realise emptiness, it's as if there's no Betty, But conventionally, there is a Betty. But hey, honey, what does exist is so subtle, it's as if there's no Betty. And they are very tasty words to hear.
So this conventional I,
Yep.
or this conventional Betty,
Yeah.
is the one who has the karma.
Yep, that's right. That's the way to say it. That's the way to say it. The one that goes from rebirth to rebirth, the one that creates karma. So we can. That's why we can talk ordinary language. Betty does this and Betty does that. She is this and she is that. My cup is this. It's blue. It's yellow. This is conventional reality. But our problem is we don't realize that our delusions are painting on top of that reality stuff that isn't there. Lama Zopa says what delusions do is decorate on top of what is there, layer upon layer of what's not there. But the extra tricky bit is what is there is so subtle, it's as if it isn't. Which sounds tricky, but it's very tasty to hear it.
But basically, when you are enlightened,
Yeah.
there is something there.
Always is something there, but it's subtle. It's not what
So
we
this
think.
something subtle
Yeah.
becomes a reality, becomes a real thing.
Oh, wait a minute, that's now confusing. I don't know what those words mean.
Okay, it's so subtle that it seems that it's not there, and then there is this conventional lie, because that's the only one we can agree upon and see as a,
We don't see the convention.
well, feel as a solid one, but we know that it's not there.
Okay.
And it's
Okay. It's good enough, yes. Leave it there.
okay.
That's good enough, yeah. Have a cup of tea. Or something. Have an illusory cup of tea. An empty cup of tea. What, darling? Go.
A note. You
Yeah.
mentioned the book of Song of Enlightenment.
Yes. Yes.
It is translated to Hebrew by Schulman. It's
Oh, wonderful. Very nice.
Tayara, so
Good. That's fantastic. It's a lovely, beautiful trick. Did he do my advertisement yesterday for my devotion CD? Did he do an advertisement?
Yes.
I'm talking to them now. I'm being skillful talking to them, not you. Don't take it personally. Did he do an advertisement yesterday? Good, okay. Oh, so I'll tell you the history of it. It's very funny. I did tell you. Maybe I didn't. I told you that my mother was a singer, and she taught me. She heard little Bobsy. She called me Bobsy, so she thought I had potential. So all the other sisters would go off to the football, and I'd go. I didn't like all the shouting and yelling, so I went. I did music with my mummy, you know. So she had all these hopes for me. So then in '68, she sent me to London. Well, my sister was going, so she sent me off there, hoping I'd continue studying my singing. But I was ripe and ready for revolution. What could I do? So I gave up wanting to be a singer. She broke her heart, you know, I'm sure. So then anyway, that's 68. And now it's like, what's that? 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. It's 50 years ago, isn't it? So 50 years later, I finally put out a little CD, and I offered, in my heart, I offered to my mum. What happened is a few years ago in Sydney, my friend Yantra, who's my collaborator, she's a composer. And she came to a retreat and she heard me sing the dedication prayers, and she said she recognised a trained voice. So then she mentioned, so just for 2 or 3 years actually, just spent a few days in her studio in Sydney. We didn't know what to do first. We started off, and you know, you hear people who put music to Buddhist prayers. I'm sorry, I can't stand it. All these pan pipes and flutes and la-di-das and cymbals and gongs. I think it's revolting, you know. So we started doing something. It just didn't work with music because Tibetans don't have music. It's a cappella. I mean, they have drums and gongs at certain points, but there's no instruments that play with you. It's very medieval. So anyway, we started doing a cappella, and then they never do parts either. It's just one tune, and often their tunes are not like our music at all. They're, very boring. They've got 2 ways they sing. They chant, which is a bit like hip hop. It's rhythmic, and you chant around. There's no real tune. It's like da 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 like that. And you sometimes go up, sometimes go down. That's not really a tune. Then they have tunes, and they're very interesting tunes, but they're just repeats of 2 lines. It's like da 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 50 times. There's no variation, so it's kind of boring, you know. Do you understand? So anyway, so then she started on a computer. Then she'd record me doing one. Then she'd do multiple tracks of that one, and then we'd do parts with seconds and thirds and sometimes 4 parts. But I used to be a soprano. I'm not anymore. I'm like a bass baritone now. So she would do the high bits, because a friend of mine, Pearlie, who's a musician, said you've got to have more high voices. So Yantra did the high voices. So it ends up really being a choir of Rabinas, basically. But it's about a 30-minute little puja I did, and then a few mantras. That's the history. And it raises money for my bodhicitta trust.
Which one are you in the choir?
It's all me. Come on. Oh, they're me. They're all me. There's many me's, okay? Have a cup of tea. Thank you.